Ajit Kabayel, fighting out of Germany, pulls a big upset and defeats Frank Sanchez, who fights out of Cuba, now lives in the United States. Huge upset in the heavyweight division, because I think it's pretty fair to say that they were bringing in Kabayel for Sanchez to beat and kind of have Sanchez move up the rankings in the top 10 of the heavyweight division. It didn't work out for Team Sanchez. Now, I'll say right off the bat, before the fight even starts, when I looked at both men, I was struck by the fact that it looked to me like Frank Sanchez had bulked up considerably since his previous fights, and that gave me concern, because it's like, okay, so did you bulk up by doing a lot of lifting? Which would imply that you might have spent more time in the weightlifting gym than the boxing gym, because it does take considerable effort to bulk up, even though he's a heavyweight, right? But if you take a look at him, he's got ridiculous chaps and these huge delts. That's what stood out to me. So it's either you put a ton of time in and focused on a lot of weightlifting, or you just ate a lot and really upped your caloric intake without increasing your output, which is also cause for alarm. Or, I don't know. But the bigger question is really, why did you choose to do that? What advantage did you think having putting on some size will give you? Because as we know, those muscles require more oxygen, and sometimes the sort of payoff isn't worth the price, in terms of, you're going to use up more oxygen, require more oxygen throughout the fight just to move around and fight. Is it worth that supposed strength gain or size advantage that you think you have? In this particular case, if that was the thinking, it did not work out. But, okay, so now let's take a look at the first round. This also gave me cause for alarm right off the bat, because Frank Sanchez, in spite of having that size advantage, chose to move backwards and move around the perimeter of the ring. He chose to be the runner, which is also perplexing, because Kabayel is not a very big heavyweight. And if you look at footage of Kabayel, in his previous fights, he's a smaller guy, but he tended to be the one moving around the ring, like around the perimeter. Very, very, tons of lateral movement. So I'm really perplexed by Team Sanchez's strategy. What was this, like, we're going to out box a smaller boxer, and we put on more size? This just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, to his credit, Kabayel didn't do that. He didn't try to outbox Sanchez. He was just persistent, kept up his double high, very tight guard. Got to give a lot of credit to Kabayel for using a very effective high double tight guard. Like, his elbows were in too. And Kabayel showed, being the smaller man, Kabayel showed very effective defense, kind of stalking Frank Sanchez down and using head movement and torso movement and parrying and whatnot. So the third cause for alarm for me in that very first round was that Kabayel managed to get Sanchez, the bigger guy, in basically a guillotine hold. So now that means, the bigger guy, Frank Sanchez, is bent over 90 degrees at the waist, and Kabayel's holding him in that headlock. Now, it's not MMA, so he doesn't get to jump the ghillie and try to finish him off on the ground. And he doesn't gain or lose any points by doing that. But it's a very dominant position, right? If you can force the other fighter to be bent over and stick him in a headlock. So, and Kabayel was able to do that it seemed like 3 or 4 times in the first round. And so I'm saying to myself, like, what is Sanchez thinking here? Like, why are you letting yourself get out-grappled, so to speak, by the smaller man? Even though this isn't a grappling match, you don't want to, in quotations, lose those sort of head game, position games, especially for two heavyweight fighters. So right off the bat, I was a little perplexed by Sanchez's physique and his actions, his game plan. Now, to Frank's credit, he was able to get off his jab right hand a couple times, but Kabayel was able to get in an overhand rights and nice tight little uppercuts as well, and that seemed to be the plan for him, was to just maintain that tight defense and constantly step to Sanchez and then continually pepper him with body shots, uppercuts, tie up, clinched on the inside. Although, you know what, a lot of times it was Sanchez who was initiating that clinch. What I didn't really like from Sanchez was quite often he would post with his lead hand, with his jab hand, meaning he wasn't able to maintain an appropriate distance for himself. So he's trying to just keep Kabayel from coming forward by sticking his jab hand out. But that's not how, you need to maintain the distance, not just with your feet, but also with your hands. Sanchez should have been throwing laser sharp jabs straight at Kabayel continually, not just trying to move around the perimeter of the ring laterally. The second thing Sanchez did that I didn't think was great was after he'd throw his 1-2 jab right hand, he'd kind of fall into Kabayel and initiate the clinch rather than fight on the inside. So I'm not sure again what was the thought process behind that. But sometimes to try to create distance, what Sanchez would do would just push Kabayel off him with both arms. And that is that's like a rookie amateur fault. You'll hear coaches yell at their fighters for doing that in amateur sparring sessions. And they'll, rightfully so, because what they'll say is, hey, the same amount of energy you just took to push him off you should be taking that energy and using it to punch him to get him off you. It's absolutely true. You gotta literally punch your way out if you don't want to fight on the inside. So I didn't like what I saw from Sanchez in terms of strategy, tactics, and technique. So to make the long story short, that was basically the same activity that went from rounds 1 through 7, with Sanchez trying to move away, trying but not being really able to secure the distance he wanted, which was to keep Kabayel at the end of his jab hand and his right hand. But again, in order to keep him at the end of your punch, you've got to throw those punches, and they got to mean something. So finally, just Kabayel's consistent peppering of Sanchez wore him down, and he was able to land a right body shot, then a left liver shot. That dropped Sanchez to his knees in the 7th round, in the middle of the ring. Now, Sanchez was able to get up and beat the count, but Kabayel just kind of pressed forward, caught him in the corner, and threw a jab to the head, and then a stabbing jab right to the center, right down the center line of Frank Sanchez's body, and that dropped him, and that Sanchez was not able to beat the count off of that body shot. So huge props to Kabayel, because Kabayel and his team made significant changes from what I've seen from him in the past. If you check out my breakdown that I did in the spring of the ring's top 10 heavyweights, I was pretty critical of Kabayel, mainly because of some flaws I saw in his footwork, where he'd cross his feet over and just continually walk around the perimeter of the ring while keeping his head turned faced towards the center. Now, he didn't do any of that in this fight, and so I've got to give him credit because it shows, he has the smarts and the motivation to modify how he fights depending on who he's fighting. And I just saw incredible improvement from him in this fight. Now for Sanchez, I'm just perplexed, remain perplexed. What went on? What was the thinking behind this? This is you're getting a big fight on a big stage. It's on the undercard, but it's still a big stage. The Saudis love putting on heavyweight matches. This was a setup for him to win. So what went wrong? If you were injured, then why would you take this fight? There'll be another card in June, right? You've got to just postpone things if you're injured. But what's up with the putting on all the muscle mass, upper body muscle mass? Are you trying to improve your punching power? That's simply, you've got to actually punch. And I think that might have been the problem here. It was just he had so much bulk that it's not so much he's quote unquote muscle bound. It's just that those muscles take up a lot of oxygen and energy to throw punches. And so, maybe Sanchez just didn't have the energy to have a high output. But he should have known that. He should have already figured that out in sparring in the gym, which leads me to my next question, which is did Frank Sanchez get enough quality sparring in the gym? What did his training camp consist of? Because to me, it just looked like he didn't spar enough because he's resorting to these super amateurish coping devices to try to create distance, like posting, shoving. And like I said, those are things that even an amateur trainer should not and would not tolerate in a developing amateur fighter, let alone a world-class professional heavyweight. So, what happened? Did Sanchez just go out and eat a lot of Canelo beef or something and not go to the gym? Like I said, I don't know. I just have questions. I don't have any answers. Maybe some of you guys have more insight into what went on in Frank Sanchez's camp. What do you think about Ajit Kabayel? Who do you think he should fight next? Who do you think Frank Sanchez should fight next? Tell me what you think of the fight. Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for listening.